All right, gang, welcome back to Procreate. So, what we're going to look at now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at what is called an adjustment area. So, this is over here in the upper left-hand area, and this is the adjustments tab. So, we're going to cover all of the adjustments kind of throughout the course. There's some that are a little more valuable than others, and some that are a little more complex, like curves. But all I wanted to do in here is show you where to go to get them. And I wanted to show you kind of what they do. So we're going to be working with these in application throughout the project, but I wanted to show you what they do. So let's go ahead now. Let's grab our hard brush. Let's go ahead and turn it up a little bit. And let's grab a red color. Any red color will do. And let's put a red dot on our canvas. All right, now that's kind of super small. So you know how to do the transformation. Let's go ahead and transform it and make it a little bit bigger. All right, so now you got a red dot. Now you're saying, what do I do with this thing, right? Let's go ahead and hit the first adjustment. Let's make it an opacity adjustment. Now you see how my iPad is saying slide to adjust. So let's go ahead, slide our stylus to the right, and you see that it goes to 100%. Slide your stylus to the left, and the opacity begins to shrink down. The right and left control for adjustments is key. All right, so that's an opacity adjustment. Now the one I wanted to show you here is what's called the Gaussian blur. This one we are going to use constantly. So if you blur it and you move your stylus to the right, you see how it gets all blurry like a long night of drinking? Yeah, that's happening. So when you go through, that's what Gaussian blur is. Now there's something called a motion blur. Now, slide to adjust. You can bring these two things apart. You can bring them to the other side apart. That's what a motion blur is. Now, you see I've still got some blur on there. I'm going to double tap it, and that undid the motion blur. All right. Now you've got what's called a perspective blur. Now, to mess with this, we're going to mess with this a little bit later. But you see that if I bring the perspective blur up to the top, and then I swipe to the right, you'll see how this hazy area appears at the bottom. Now I'm going to use two fingers. I'm going to tap on it to undo. And now let's move the motion blur over to the left-hand side of the circle. And let's swipe to the right. And now the perspective blur ends up on the right-hand side. All right, two fingers, undo. All right, perfect. All right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to leave sharpen and noise adjustments until we actually do a picture. Okay, so when we start talking about pictures and reference files, we'll add noise and sharpen in there. All right, now the last adjustments I want to talk to you about then in this one, take a look at hue, saturation, and brightness. Now we covered these variables in other lessons around color. So I wanted you to create a red circle on purpose. When we move across the hue, you see here we can change the color of the circle. So we can make it a little bit more purple. Now, you can unsaturate it. You see how we move to gray? Or you can really saturate it and move it all the way to the pureness of that color. And then you can go brighter, make it almost invisible, or darker and turn it almost black. All right, this is very, very helpful, folks, when you are changing the color of things. When we start doing grayscale rendering later in the class, this is going to come up. You're going to see all of how this works. Now, you can also go through and do what is called a curves adjustment. Now, there's an entire lesson on curves adjustment later. I just want to show you how you can go through and adjust different curves. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to undo that. I'm going to bring in color balance. Now, this is your RGB. You see where red, green, blue is? You remember our color lesson on color? Red, green, blue. Remember, through a combination of those, you can make almost any color you really want. So you can adjust the shadows, the midtones, or even the highlights using these. We can reset them. And lastly, you can recolor. So we go back up here and we recolor. All right, that's a little bit on all of the different adjustments. We're going to show you how to use each one of these in the context of a project coming up. So let's go ahead and get into the next technical lesson, and then let's move on to those projects.